Going on YouTube universe, my name is Trent. Some of you guys at home might know me as Zirra from other content that I throw out into the universe, and welcome to the Hip and Shoulder, the channel where we discuss everything Australian rules football. And it's so hard to believe the 2025 season has just rolled around like that. I'm still in the mindset that the 2024 season has only just finished, and I had plans for all different types of content to come into the mix on the off season, and it just flew by so quickly. Time is all but fleeting. It is fucking crazy to think how quick, the year's already gone. We're already into our third month of the year. That's fucking insane. So, with that being said, considering I haven't done it yet, I am here today to deliver my 2025 season predictions, and I'm going to tack on a few things that I haven't done in the past just to beef up the predictions a little bit more. When it comes to predictions, I've kind of been hit and miss. A couple of years back, I predicted Lachie Neale winning his second Brownlow. Last year, I predicted Brisbane winning the Grand Final, but outside of that, kind of been like a seesaw ride. We've been up and down, so fingers crossed we can start delivering some more fluid predictions and predictions that come true, because then it kind of gives myself a little bit of self-confidence and maybe gives you guys a little bit more confidence in myself when it comes to shit like this. Before I dive into the predictions I'm going to make today, feel free to share your own predictions in the comment section down below. We are going to be looking at everything from the ladder prediction, from first position all the way to 18th, premiers, runners-up, Brownlow Medalist, Coleman Medalist, and some other things thrown into the mix, as I said, just to spice things up a little bit. And I think we just kick things off with the ladder prediction, because once we get the ladder prediction out of the way, it's easier to make our predictions with everything else that's going to fall in line. Who's going to win the Premiership, the Brownlow, the Wooden Spoon, the NAB Rising Star, everything like that. So, we're going to kick this off a little bit differently. I would normally just drop the entire ladder on screen right now, but I think incrementally we're just going to reveal it bit by bit just to save a little bit of face here. So we are going to reveal the bottom 10 teams, kicking off with who I believe is going to be in the bottom 4. In 18th position, dead last, as much as it pains me to say it, I think it's going to be Richmond. We are in a state of transition right now. We have just had an exodus of players via trade, retirement, and it's left us in a bit of a hole. I'm only, and I say this very, very sparingly and probably a little bit more over-exuberant than many would be, but I only see Richmond winning 2, maybe 3 games this year, and that would be if we are lucky at best. My only take as a Richmond supporter this year is being able to see the young kids get game time and seeing them, exposed to the game and what they're going to offer to our club moving forward. Number 1 pick in the draft heading into next year, though, will be pretty handy. And then with North Melbourne giving us a first-round pick as well, we're sitting in the pocket to potentially pick up 2 first-rounders in the top 5. So, hey, I'll take that any day of the week, considering Tasmania's coming into the competition soon, and everyone else eventually is going to fall off a cliff, and Richmond's rebuilding right now. So, I hope this is just all in good stead. In 17th position, I have West Coast. I don't know if they're going to improve all too much. Injuries early to players like Elliot Yeo, Dom Sheed, I think is going to affect them quite a bit. And they're still reliant heavily on young talent, but the edge that they have compared to a team like Richmond is through like the COVID years and all the injuries that West Coast have had over the past seasons. They've had to kind of blood their young guns quickly, and they're going to be in better stead for it because those kids have had that early exposure, so they're not going to feel the rigors of being nervous because they're being thrown to the wolves per se. But I don't see much improvement happening, especially with players like Jack Darling leaving. I know a lot of people were, in the past giving Jack Darling a bit of shit, but taking him out of the mix now pretty much leaves Oscar Allen to do everything on his own, at least from my perspective. So it's going to be interesting to see how they operate, but I've got them finishing in 17th. In 16th, I have St Kilda, and that might shock some, but I just feel they're going to be in a bit of a spot this year that sees them flatline. I think losing Josh Battle is going to hurt them quite severely. He's not, don't get me wrong, he's not like an elite talent and everyone's clamoring to get him, but his role that he played was so pivotal to setting up St Kilda's defensive line, and I still feel while Ross Lyon is so defensively focused, St Kilda aren't going to get any better offensively. So I've got them finishing in 16th. And in 15th, to round out my bottom 4, I have North Melbourne. I've got them on the improve. They're going up on a upwards trajectory, but I just feel they're not ready yet to take that step out of the bottom 4. They could shock us all. They really could step out of that bottom 4, and I think that they've now got the makeup to finally take that step, but I personally don't think they will this year. Maybe into 2026 moving forward, that's when we'll start seeing a steady climb, but again, having them in 15th place already has them better suited than where they have been in previous years. So I think that's going to be a positive for North Melbourne supporters. Following that, in 14th place, I have the Bulldogs, and I feel this is going to be a severe drop-off. We have seen Jack McRae, we have seen Caleb Daniel, we have seen Bailey Smith. All these players leave this club. There is now, question marks around whether Jamara Ugle-Hagan is going to come back and play. Marcus Bontempelli is going to miss the first 6 weeks. Adam Treloar is out injured. Ed Richards is out injured. This puts strain on so many locations all around the ground for this club. Aaron Norton's going to have to be the man up forward with Sam Darcy. Is Sam Darcy ready to step into that role as a, main key forward, like the main guy? Is he going to split ruck duties? Is he going to have to stay forward more often than not? The defensive line for the Bulldogs have shifted a bit. Fraser has gone back there now to start throwing his weight around. Rory Lobb at centre-half back, we saw during last year, was a bit of a revelation for the Bulldogs, but can it be sustainable? Riley Sanders, full of talent, but could never break into the team because he was bevoed. So does he have enough composure to play at the level consistently? Again, a lot of question marks around this club, and I feel there's going to be a bit of a drop-off, and I'm still very much in the boat that I was clamouring on about last season. Luke Beveridge versus the players. I feel there is still a disconnect, and I feel the Bulldogs will not take a forward step until Luke Beveridge has been axed as coach. Just my opinion, feel free to come at me, but that's how I'm feeling about the Dogs this year. Moving on up. Next on the list, we have the Gold Coast Suns. A lot of people having these guys challenging for the top 8. They could very well do so. I still think they are not good enough to do so. And I think the main reason why we look at that is because, very similar to clubs like Brisbane, they struggle to win away from home. And we saw them at People's First Stadium last year be absolutely dominant. One of the best home teams in the competition by far. As soon as they hit the road, they crumble to dust. And I don't know whether just the acquisitions of players like Daniel Rioli and John Noble is going to set them up to be a finals winning team now. I know Damien Hardwick, when he went up there, said they're only a couple of players away from a Premiership team. They do have a good mix, but bringing all these players in now throws a spanner in the works, because you now question where players like Sam Flanders, for example, is going to play. Matt Rowell might now have to play forward a little bit more than what he's used to be playing. And can you afford to have a Matt Rowell type stuck in your forward 50 instead of playing on ball? I don't know. A lot of question marks. Maybe I'm still filthy on Damien Hardwick. I don't know. But that's where I've got the Gold Coast finishing this year. Next cab off the rank, and they could very well finish a lot higher here. I might be a little bit bullish, but I've gone with Adelaide. And I just feel it's a consistency issue that we have seen them suffer from in previous years that might continue to creep into their game throughout 2025. What I am curious to see about Adelaide, though, is how some magnet moving is going to effectively, change their game. Rory Laird now moving from a midfield role to a halfback flank. James Peatling comes into the midfield. They've got Isaac Cumming coming in here. Fogarty still deep forward. They've got Thilthorpe now coming through the mix more regularly as well. They got rid of Elliot Himmelberg, so I'm assuming we are going to see more of Thilthorpe. They kept Tex Walker around. Can he add anything after what was a very lackluster year in 2024, given how well he played in 2023? I've got them just missing the mark, but again, as I said, they could be one of those teams that surprise us this year. The next team I've got is the team that I feel is going to have one of the biggest drop-offs in 2025 comparatively to seasons past, and that is Port Adelaide, who have historically been a team that can make it all the way to the prelims and then bomb out. And this is a team that I think is going to suffer from losing players like Charlie Dixon, who, you look at their lineup and you go, okay, they've still got Todd Marshall, they've still got Mitch Georgiades, they still have I can't think of his name right now. They've got another tall player that plays in their forward line, can also ruck. He had a good hand in, some games last year, but Charlie Dixon was always their focal point. Jeremy Finlayson during this preseason has been playing a more defensive half-back kind of role, and that takes Jeremy Finlayson out of their forward, their forward half. Finlayson also chopping out in the ruck kind of takes away that forward avenue. So they're having to rely now on Todd Marshall, Mitch Georgiades to be number 1 and number 2, when in the past they've been number 3, number 4. Butters missing the start of the season due to injury now leaves only Connor Rosey in the middle kind of to do his own thing. You've got an aging Travis Boak. You've got an Ollie Wines who has failed to recapture his Brownlow years abilities that he displayed to all of us. It's going to be a tough watch for Port Adelaide, especially with now the conjecture around Ken Hinkley being his last year as coaching. He's going to pass the reins over to Josh Carr next year. That's going to transition into something I'm going to predict a little bit later on in the video, but I think Port Adelaide are going to be the one that slide out of the top 8 and miss finals completely. Next step up the rank, we have Essendon in 10th place. I feel Essendon and any team from 10th up, I feel, can be challenging for finals in my ladder prediction that I've got here. And Essendon will be thereabout, but I've got them as one of those teams that might finish on the same amount of wins, but percentage is going to let them down. And again, it's all about magnet moving with Essendon as well, because we've now seen a player like Dylan Shield transition to a half-back role. We've got some young talent coming through, and they're going to be heavily reliant on this young talent. They're going to have to rely on the team of Nate Caddy and Isaac Kako doing absolutely wacko things deep forward. Archie Perkins can play a really great game and then go missing for weeks. He's going to have to stand up tall. No Jake Stringer in this forward line now means Kyle Langford, who I probably would argue was their number 1 forward anyway, now has to kind of bear the brunt of taking the best defender all the time and can't really have Jake Stringer playing that negating role. Can Nate Caddy play that negating role? Does Peter Wright fit into this situation a lot more? Where does the ruck line fall? Because Sam Draper played up forward a lot during the preseason and looked really good, but can you afford to have a young kid who hasn't had much exposure in the way of Brian playing as the number 1 ruck? There's a lot of question marks, and a lot of teams this year heading in with those question marks around them, which is both exciting and obviously questioning too. So I've got Essendon finishing in 10th, could very well finish in the top 8. 9th place, just missing out, I've got Melbourne, and I still feel there is going to be some inner turmoil kind of fighting against them here. Clayton Oliver is back to his best, it looks like, during pre-season training, but is there going to be cohesiveness back in this lineup? Petrarca's fit, Max Gawn is back, but we know that Petrarca reportedly had issues with the club during the off-season with how the injury was handled. Clayton Oliver was almost on the verge of being traded to Geelong. So there's going to be a lot of things that happen off-field that I think might carry on through the season and impact them a little bit. And I've got them just missing the mark of the top 8. Now it's time for the top 8, and I will go from 8 through to 5th, leaving the top 4 to be revealed last. In 8th place, I have Hawthorn. I don't see them as a top 4 contending team this year. A lot of people are saying that they're coming into the year as Premiership favourites, and a lot of bookies have them as Premiership favourites. I don't see them as those favourites just yet. I know picking up players like Tom Barrass, Josh Battle really bolsters that back line. It gives them the opportunity to play Sicily up forward. If he stays in defence, they've now got a very strong intercepting core in Sicily, Barrass and Battle. Then you throw, Giath in the back if you want to throw him in there. It's going to be a very interesting watch to see how they kind of take a step forward. Will Day, if he's fit and firing, can he be a game changer for them? It's still the forward line and the tall forwards that have question marks around them. Mitch Lewis is missing a lot of football, so can he come back in and find continuity in his game? Mabior Chol looked very average during this preseason, especially in the latest hit out that we saw. So it's going to be interesting to see how they go, because I don't think they can rely on, Ginnivan and Watson to be kicking all their goals every week. Bruce is going to probably wear the sub vest if he is still even kicking around, because I can't even remember if he retired or not. So interesting watch. I've got them finishing in 8th place. In 7th, I've got Fremantle, and I've got them as my biggest riser for the year. Not only the fact that they will play finals, but the fact that I feel they could even potentially push for a top 4 finish. And I feel they're going to find more fluidity and continuity in their game style and their game plan. I do feel Shai Bolton, even though he, was very hit and miss with Richmond. Like, when he's on. But again, if he doesn't turn it on, he can go missing for weeks on end. And I feel his defensive game is something that always was something a little bit left to be desired. I do feel, though, in Fremantle's team, he can bring an X factor that forward line was kind of missing. He's that player that can also transition into the midfield and add a little bit of agility, a little bit of spark. I feel Caleb Sarong is going to go to a new level this year. Brayshaw probably set to go to a new level this year as well. Jordan Clark is finding some continuity in his game and becoming an elite player off of halfback. Really feel dark horse-wise early, Fremantle is the team to watch this year. In 6th place, I have Collingwood on the rise back to finals football. I know we can't take much out of the practice game they played against Richmond because two lists at different ends of the spectrum. But the one thing that I think Collingwood are going to benefit from this year the most is a functional forward line. And we've seen them in previous years have to go ragtag and throw pieces together because they've never had a core unit. They brought in Dan McStay, goes and injures himself, can barely get on the park. But now they've got Dan McStay. They've got Brody Myercheck. They've just traded in Tim Membry. They've got Mason Cox on the out now, and Mason Cox, I know he's not the best player in the world, but he can be serviceable to what Collingwood need. But now that they've got Membry, Myercheck, and they've got Dan McStay, then you've got the likes of players like Bobby Hill at their feet to crumb that ball. I think they're going to be one of the most dangerous forward lines this year collectively, and that's all I feel Collingwood has been missing to get back within that kind of premiership conversation. So not going to go early, but keep an eye on the Pies this year. And in 5th place, I have GWS. Again, a team who I feel could very well finish in top 4 this year. I feel should probably be in the premiership conversation given the list that they've got. And I think they're going to have a red hot crack. They've failed to kind of capture the form that they had back in 2019, and we've seen them come close but drop off and fail to take that next step. I feel 2025 is the year that they get that done. Top 4. Very controversial here given the way that I've got it ordered out, but in 4th place I have Sydney. It is very hard to see them losing away from home. You can't argue the talent of all of the players that they have in this team. I feel the only thing that might leave an indent that can't be replaced is Errol Goulden missing quote-unquote months of football with his injury. And as I would argue the competition's elite wingman, who plays that role now? I don't know whether anybody at Sydney could play that role. Maybe James Rowbottom can play an outside wing role and bring a lot of contested ball work on the outside into their game. But with Dean Cox at the helm, I'm just interested to see a brand new look Sydney Swans and see how people operate. Like Tom McCartan playing as a forward could be a master stroke from them. You know, Isaac Heaney has now popped onto the scene as one of the competition's best midfielders last year. Will be good to see him get more minutes in the midfield this year and kind of continue with that form. Chad Warner, is he going to go to Fremantle? Is he going to go to West Coast? Is he going to put on a stellar year to kind of bolster his stocks? They're going to be an interesting watch. 3rd place, Brisbane. Hard to see them dropping out of the top 4. Only really lost Joe Danaher, and somebody in my previous video when it comes to my tips, I mentioned Sam Day being a replacement for Joe Danaher, and they said that Sam Day was a spud. Not at all suggesting Sam Day is on the same level as Joe Danaher, but what I'm saying is Sam Day in the past has proven great set of hands. If he doesn't mark it, he can bring the ball to ground. He is going to play a role. There's going to be a player out there that fits that niche that they're looking for. Eric Hipwood is now going to have to pull his finger out of his ass and live up to the expectation of the size of the contract that he has been signed to. Otherwise, Brisbane have done their club dirty by giving him so much money for so fucking little in return. But I mean, adding Levi Ashcroft to this mix, especially the midfield mix, is going to be insane to watch these two go together and go to work. And some are arguing that the Ashcrofts by the end of their career might just end up being better than the Dacosses at the end of their careers. It'd be interesting to see two sets of brothers go head to head whenever they fight off, Brisbane and Collingwood. Early days, you can't really throw, Levi in the conversation of a Nick Dacos and stuff like that, because I think the Dacosses have him well covered currently. But Brisbane still very much, I feel, are going to defend their premiership reign intently and are high up there to potentially go back-to-back this year, in my opinion. 2nd place overall, as much as it pains me to say so, I've got Carlton. I just feel, just similarly to how I've been talking about Brisbane in previous years, Carlton's list and where it's at right now, if they can't get a premiership out of the team they currently have cohesively together, where is their next premiership going to come from? And I know they're missing Nick Newman for the year. Sam Walsh is going to be out for a little bit. They've got some other injuries here and there around the ground. I still feel without those players, Carlton are still one of the best teams in the competition, especially on paper. They need to translate it from on paper to on the field and find that continuity that saw them just miss out on finals 2 years ago, get absolutely smacked in finals when they made it. So, interesting watch Carlton, but I think this year they are set up to dominate, especially when you look at their fixture. The AFL want them there, I'm telling you now. Number 1 spot overall, there's only one team left, it's Geelong. And I wrestled with having, Geelong in second, Carlton in first, and mix and match, especially with Tom Hawkins not playing for Geelong anymore. Jeremy Cameron's now the main figurehead up forward. Shannon Neal in the mix, they've got some young talent that they've brought in as well. Bailey Smith on the wing, I feel is going to bring a lot of run. I feel they've been missing that Isaac Smith type player, so Bailey Smith can definitely fill that void. Interesting watch for Geelong, because I've got some big things coming out of Geelong in my predictions this year, and I just feel, and a lot of people tend to forget, everyone was focusing on how good of a run Sydney were having last year, and forgetting that Geelong were having just as good of a run before they dropped off. And I feel, when you look at the stats, Tom Hawkins wasn't really contributing all too much to the scoreboard, so they've proven they can do it without him. And I think this year, Geelong Cats might prove a lot of naysayers wrong. So that is it, my ladder prediction, 1 through the 18. Obviously, I have the wooden spoon penciled in for my boys, Richmond. For the grand final this year, I have the top 2 facing off. I've got Geelong versus Carlton in the 2025 grand final, with Carlton walking away as the premiers. I sure hope not, because I feel the city of Melbourne is going to be lit alight if they do win. But then again, if they make it to the grand final and lose, I feel the city of Melbourne's going to be lit alight anyway. So hey, beggars can't be fucking choosers. But I definitely feel Geelong and Carlton will be the final 2 facing off at the end, with Carlton walking away with the Premiership Cup. Patrick Cripps adding a premiership to his 2 Brownlows and cementing himself as one of the modern day greats of the game. As I said, though, there are a number of teams that I feel are going to contest for the premiership. I feel Brisbane, Sydney, GWS are going to give it a red-hot shot. Collingwood and Fremantle, the outside favourites. I don't think Hawthorn are there just yet. Melbourne and Essendon on the cusp of playing finals, not in that premiership window, I feel, but they're getting closer to opening that window up. When it comes to the individual awards, I have the Brownlow Medal for 2025 this year going to Nick Dacos. I just feel it has to be his year. Just misses out in his first year due to injury. If he plays that last game of the round, polls some votes, he wins the Brownlow. Simple as that. Last year, came second, but still polled enough votes to beat 2017's Dustin Martin vote count, which at the time was the record for most votes in an AFL season. This has to be the year he cracks it, right? I mean, I feel there is a lot of glazing going on when it goes to Nick Dacos. Some people beat him up a little bit more than I feel than he is, but he's an elite talent, and there's no denying the umpires do not have their eyes out for Nick Dacos whenever he's got the ball. So expect to see a lot of 3s and 2s thrown his way come Brownlow night. My smoky for the Brownlow is going to be Caleb Sarong from Fremantle. I feel he's slowly building to his peak, and he just shows absolute glimpses of brilliance, and I feel it just gets overshadowed by some other midfielders in the competition, especially given this quote-unquote Vic bias, and being from Western Australia, he might not get as much attention from Victorian media, but I feel he's one that's going to give it a red-hot crack this year outside of the normal, suspects that you'd expect. The NAB Rising Star, I think it's hard to go by Levi Ashcroft, and very original for me picking, arguably the best talent taking it out of last year's draft pool heading into this year. But he should slot into Brisbane's 22 straight away and have an immediate impact. And I think that's what's going to set him ahead of other players kind of in that category. I think as a smoky, Sam Lawler from Richmond could give it a red-hot crack. Even though he copped that jaw injury a few weeks ago, he's still primed to start round 1. And if he can get 22, 23 games under his belt this year, I think he'll give it a red-hot push too, because he's got a lot of explosiveness about him. And outside of that, maybe Finn O'Sullivan from North Melbourne. I was actually going to go into this video originally with Yaga Smith from Carlton as my NAB Rising Star winner, but obviously the ACL injury that's going to bench him for 12 months, absolutely heartbreaking, especially with an elite talent like he is. Sucks for Carlton straight out the gate, but hey, will be exciting to see the damage that some of these young kids can do for their respective teams this year. For the Coleman, if Geelong are going to finish on top of the ladder, then I am going with Jeremy Cameron to win it. And I know that's probably a little bit facetious to think, given the fact that Jeremy Cameron plays a more high forward role now and he's more of an intercepting player that brings the ball into their forward 50. I think Jeremy Cameron can have a big year. Jesse Hogan, probably in the conversation again, especially if I've got them finishing close to the top 4. Harry Mackay, Charlie Curnow, are they going to pinch the ball too much off of each other for one of them to not win it? It's going to be an interesting watch. I mean, there's going to be a lot of people in the conversation, but I'm going with Jeremy Cameron. We're going with someone a little bit outside of what everybody else would kind of be picking. I'm adding 3 new things to my predictions this year that I've never done in the past. We're going to go with who I think is going to win Goal of the Year, who I think is going to win Mark of the Year, and a quote-unquote big call for the 2025 season. For Goal of the Year, I'm going to go with Nick Dacos. I'm expecting another passage of play where he's going to get the ball, he's going to chop people up, he's going to dance around them, he's going to snag it, and everybody's going to go absolutely fucking bananas for it. He did it last year, had 2 of the 3 nominations wrapped up for himself, and, you know, when he just runs around people with so much ease like that and he can slot goals, why not celebrate them? For Mark of the Year, I'm going with somebody who popped off in their preseason game only a week or 2 ago, and that's Kai Lohmann from Brisbane. He just gets some fucking airtime, that kid, and he is not afraid to throw himself at packs. I feel we're going to see him take one of the all-time great hangers this year, and he's going to take that Mark of the Year award home very comfortably. For my big call, we have already touched on it once, but I'm going to bring it to light again. Ken Hinkley, this is his last year as head coach of Port Adelaide before Josh Carr takes over next year. My big call that I'm going to make is that Ken Hinkley doesn't make it to the end of 2025 because Port Adelaide start their year off with a terrible run. Probably going to do the opposite now, and if you're a betting man, probably go put money on Port Adelaide to win the flag. Now, I've made that call, but that's where I'm at with that call. I don't see anything else being too outrageous apart from maybe Fremantle finishing in the top 4 as an outside chance. Maybe let's do that as well. I'll throw that as an outside chance. Fremantle finish in the top 4, despite me having them sitting in 7th on my ladder prediction here. Fremantle top 4 and shock the world. I mean, they were sitting in top 4 last year with only a couple of rounds to go and then dropped the ball and went bang bang and missed finals completely. So it's not out of the realm that they can't make it there. So is it a big call? I don't know. But let's go with those 2. Ladies and gentlemen, we got there. That is it for my season predictions for the 2025 season. I would say enjoy the kickoff of round 0 later on tonight with Brisbane taking on Geelong. But Brisbane and Geelong and Essendon versus Gold Coast have been postponed until a later date because of the cyclone that is threatening people up in Queensland. If I do happen to have any people that watch these videos that are affected directly by the cyclones that are going on right now, or have family and friends that are affected, my thoughts, and I think I speak for everyone when I say all of our thoughts are with you all, and I hope you get through this. I'm just excited that football is back, and even though it's only 2 rounds, and again, as I said at the top of the video, they should have just fucking cancelled the round with only 2 games left, but I'll still happily sit back and watch Hawthorn taking on Sydney, and I'll still happily watch GWS taking on Collingwood, because both prove, I think, to be great games to unofficially kick the year off. But that's it from me, guys. I'm out of here. If your teams are playing this weekend, good luck to you. And as always, I will catch you guys next time.